Welcome back to Philosophy Roulette. This is Philosophy Roulette 48. And, yeah, day N+1 of the quarantine. So, let's look at some philosophy. Let's go get, like, an analysis article or something. I've been doing these other journals, and I'm, like, afraid of how long they're. What am I afraid of? I guess I have to go keep, let's just see what new is. Why should I get analysis? Run back to what I know. Agriculture. Well, I looked at a bunch of these already. You know what? Let's scroll down. What's at the bottom of this? More. Page 2. I'm going on to page 2. Some reviews. Slavery and political apps. European Journal of Political Philosophy. Astronomy and space sciences. That's cool. Nothing short. Oh, they don't actually hold anything from astronomy and space sciences. That's sad. Frontiers in psychology. Let's see what we got. Let's keep looking. Healthcare analysis. Very pertinent nowadays. Let's see. Historical materialism. It's Marxism. Business ethics. Mathematical. Pseudo indifferent fields. Pseudo finite different fields. Okay. Let's see what else we got. History of biology. Ooh, mind. Let's check out what mind got, really. Mind sometimes has shorter stuff, too. Alright, so, oh, look at this. Short. So this 10 pages. Oh, it's a review. This one might be enough. Yeah, Catherine. Paradox of evidential equivalence. And we are talking 14 pages. Let's see if we can get something a little shorter. 9 pages. This is a review. Oh, these are all reviews. I mean, this isn't a review. Let's see, we got 9 pages. Let's take a look. This is also 9 pages. Oh, there's a review. Let's see what else we got. Alright, so this might be the only one we have that looks like it's of length. Well, that's nice. We can download it. Yes, 9 pages. Okay, so this is what we're doing, because we have it, and it's 9 pages, and we're good. Good to go. Okay. So. And we're off. Barry Maguire, 2018, argues that there are no reasons of the right kind for affective attitudes. There is no reason for your incredulous reaction to this thesis, he claims. Well, I mean, am I incredulous? Let's see. There are no reasons for affective attitude. Well, I have to know what he means by affective attitude. This paper argued we have no reasons to accept his thesis. Okay. Maguire provides the following gloss of his argument. And the heart of my argument is this. The so-called reasons of the right kind for affective attitudes have different have a different... That's what I get if I take a day off yesterday and I can't even read anymore. The heart of my argument is this. So-called reasons of the right kind for affective attitudes have a different nature from reasons for action. Reasons for action are gradable. They have weight and they are contributory. They are incomplete parts of a specific kind of explanation of overall normative facts, such as facts about what you ought to do. But so-called reasons of the right kind for effective attitudes are neither gradable nor contributory. In section 1 to 3, I examine these purported differences between reasons for action and so-called reasons for affective attitudes. In each case, I argue that the differences are exaggerated and that to the extent they obtain, they are best explained by differences between action and affective attitudes, not between kinds of normative support. In section 4, I argue that even if McGuire were correct, the extent of the threat to one of his central targets, so-called buck-passing views, would remain unclear. Okie dokie. Let's find out. McGuire begins with a personal case about the death of his grandmother. He had multiple reactions to her passing. She was suffering greatly at her death and believed that death would allow her to rejoin her husband. This seemed to make relief at her passing fitting, but she was also the matriarch of his family and had a wonderful sense of humor. This seemed to make sadness at her passing fitting. Of course, these considerations did not compete with one another. It's not as if the fitting level of relief had been identical to the fitting level of sadness, then the two would have canceled each other out and he ought to have felt nothing at all. Rather, both sadness and relief were fitting. So weird, yeah. It's a good point. You can have more than one emotion. We were talking about this a few days ago with you're allowed to, they don't have to all cancel in one giant emotional karma account. McGuire's other cases build on one in which your good friend Andrew gets a promotion you deserve. McGuire says that it seems fitting to feel disappointed and displeased given your deservingness, yet at the same time pleased given your friendship. In a later version of the case, Andrew's being promoted allows him to stay in his apartment, an apartment that he had to leave would have gone to another good friend, Margaret. Had he had to leave, would have gone to another good friend, Margaret. McGuire says it can be fitting to feel both pleased for Andrew's sake and displeased for Margaret's. Okay. These cases are meant to illustrate one purported contrast between reasons for action and fit-making considerations, which are widely taken to be reasons and which McGuire takes to exhaust the so-called reasons for affective attitudes. The former compete to determine what one ought to do overall, the latter do not. From here, I use FMCs to mean fit-making considerations or fit-making considerations for affective attitudes as dictated by the context. McGuire's argument would go through for one if competition were a feature of reason per se, but it is not. Consider a case which I have a reason to push button A. It will save 5 lives. I also have a reason to push B. It will save a 6th life. It should be clear that these reasons do not compete merely in virtue of being reasons. If I can, I should simply push both. Of course, this does not suggest that these are not reasons. Reasons certainly can compete. They would in the above case, for instance, if I could only push one button. More generally, reasons compete when there is tension of some kind between the options they are reasons for. The most obvious kind of tension is just illustrated, stems from options being mutually exclusive. If McGuire's argument is to go through, there needs to be some tension between the agent's effective options in his cases, tension that would lead us to expect competition were the FMC's reasons. McGuire never says anything explicit about this tension, what this tension amounts to, but we know first that it does not stem from mutual exclusion, as McGuire accepts that it is possible to feel both attitudes in each of his cases. Second, he must be implicitly relying on some intuitive tension between the particular attitudes he discusses, rather than some general tension between affective attitudes. Consider the fact that a friend you're visiting is sick makes it fitting to feel sorry for her, and makes it fitting to feel worried about catching her ailment. Yeah, why are you visiting anyone nowadays? Don't be visiting anyone. Go home. Just go home. Cases like this would do nothing for McGuire, for intuitively there is no tension here whatsoever. Actually, I don't know if I should say that. You go do what you need to do, but you have to stay safe. Sometimes you have to go visit people. There are risks, but be careful out there, folks. Cases like this would do nothing for McGuire, for intuitively there is no tension here whatsoever, and so no one would expect the reasons for these attitudes to compete. With all this in mind, considering the following passage, the simplest way for considerations to compete is for one to make an attitude fitting and for another to make a very... The simplest way for is for one to make an attitude fitting and for another to make that very attitude unfitting. Suppose you didn't get some promotion, but your good friend Andrew did. You know that you would have deserved the promotion, but it's really good that Andrew got it. The fact that you didn't get the promotion makes it fitting to feel disappointed. The fact that your friend got the promotion makes it fitting to feel pleased, but the considerations supporting these attitudes do not compete. The fact that you didn't get the promotion doesn't make it unfitting to feel pleased, and the fact that your friend got it doesn't make it unfitting to feel disappointed. It is fitting to feel pleased and disappointing in these different respects in this case. Yes. That seems to be a common example among discussions of this sort. McGuire begins here by identifying the simplest form of competition, which we may call intra-option competition. Reasons for X competing with reasons against X. We may contrast this with intra-option competition, and inter-option competition. Reasons for X competing with reasons for Y. Intra-option competition is useful for McGuire because it always obtains, unlike inter-option competition, as it's read by the button and the sick friend cases. Reason X always competes with reasons against X because taking option X and not taking option X are always mutually exclusive. McGuire then turns to a case in which an FMC for disappointment fails to compete with an FMC for pleasure. At first glance, this looks like inter-option competition between reasons for disappointment and pleasure, yet McGuire surely means this to be a failure of intra-option competition. Why else mention it? There are two ways to read McGuire's cases as exhibiting failures of intra-option competition. First, the cases might be read as suggesting that there are no unfit making considerations for affective attitudes, only the presence or absence of fit making ones. But if FMCs fail to compete intra-option merely because there are no unfit making considerations for them to compete with, it's hard to see why we should conclude that FMCs aren't really reasons. If, probability per impossible, there were some action against which there were never any reasons, it wouldn't suggest that there could be no reasons for that action. Okay, yeah. More promisingly, we might take McGuire to be assuming that in each of his cases, the relevant attitudes are opposed, such that FMCs for one attitude are ipso facto unfit making considerations for another. For example, the case described in the passage above, the FMCs for disappointment are ipso facto unfit making considerations for pleasure. Yeah. McGuire says nothing to defend this claim. Nevertheless, one might find it tempting on grounds that these particular attitudes, though not mutually exclusive, are intuitively opposed. Yeah, what was it? It was something on Stoicism that actually was discussing this exact problem, how to rationally separate pleasure and disappointment and the emotions of pleasure and disappointment. I should go look that up. But that was a nice article, yeah. One might read McGuire as follows: FMCs for disappointment and pleasure don't compete, and thus either disappointment and pleasure are not opposing attitudes, or FMCs for these attitudes are not reasons. Given this choice, we should accept that FMCs are not reasons. But this is a false dilemma. To see this, we need to distinguish two claims. The first is that there is tension between feeling disappointment and pleasure, full stop. The second is that there is tension between feeling disappointment and pleasure about precisely the same thing. With this in mind, consider another passage. The fact that your friend will be able to stay in his apartment makes it fitting for you to be pleased about the promotion, but the fact that the promotion wasn't really deserved seems not to make it fitting for you to be pleased about the promotion as such. This is all plausible, but notice that we have distinguished two attitudes, both of which are fitting, that are perfectly compatible with each other. Being pleased that he can stay in his apartment and not being pleased about the promotion. As argued, McGuire needs to rely on some tension between pleasure and displeasure in order to generate an expectation of competition. Yet here, McGuire seems to be claiming just the opposite. Pleasure and displeasure in this case are perfectly compatible with each other. The above distinction allows us to make sense of this. Pleasure and displeasure may be opposed such that it is in some way problematic, perhaps even impossible, to feel both precisely about the same thing. The fact that your friend can stay in his apartment might make it feel fitting to feel pleased about this aspect of his promotion, and therefore also make it unfitting to feel displeased about the same aspect of his promotion. But it is not an unfit making consideration for feeling displeased, full stop, because it is not an unfit making consideration for feeling displeased about his promotion as such. As McGuire himself makes clear, there is no tension whatsoever between taking these attitudes, opposed though they may be in broader sense, towards different things or even towards different aspects of the same thing. Yeah, again, not my area, but I did read that paper that was talking on these exact things that spelled out the exact sort of a much more precise sort of conceptual scheme on how to understand this, at least in a historical context. Not historical, it was a Stoic philosophy. That was able to separate out the rationality of the understanding and the emotional attitudes that were also alongside them. So, and the point of that paper was that modern people should take this guy seriously because he had this all worked out already. Seems very apt at the moment. So, if anyone is interested in this stuff, they should go look back. I mean, it's basically one of the fewer ancient philosophy papers I've done, so it should be easy enough to scroll through and find. What Maguire's case illustrates, I submit, is not that FMCs are not reasons, but rather that the context in which we tend to think about reasons for actions and reasons for attitudes differ, in part because actions and attitudes themselves differ. We tend to think about how we and others should act in contexts where the reasons for them compete, because actions are frequently in tension and we need to pick one. By contrast, as Maguire's cases show, we often consider how we and others should feel in contexts where there are no relevant tensions, because we can feel many different ways about different things or about different aspects of the same thing. In such contexts, there is no reason to expect competition among relevant FMCs, and therefore no reason to think they are not reasons. Okay. Sure. I mean, again, it would be very good if we could actually spell out how, like, emotions and reason interact, but that seems to be a general problem that, like, everyone has at the moment. I'd have to, like, really, it seems like it's going to be a long time before we get that right, because we just don't seem to have, a good enough grasp on these things. One day. According to Maguire, reasons combine to determine what options to take overall. FMCs do not. Here's an example. You are a knight about to face the terrible dragon. Oh, cool, dragons. The dragon has sharp claws. Ah! She has the ability to swipe at you with the claws. Well, what would be the point of the claws if you can't swipe at somebody? She has a look in her eye that suggests she might quite like to. Do these distinct facts about the dragon constitute distinct reasons to fear the dragon? There are distinct considerations, to be sure, but intuitively they work together to constitute one source of normative support for fear that the prospect of being cut open by a swipe from the dragon. Yeah, see, this is the problem. This is exactly what my sort of above worry was. Exactly how, or like what's the interaction here between reason and emotion? And it looks like this sort of thing here looks like it's actually getting it backwards. You don't infer from, like, oh, the sharp claws and, like, the evil glint in the eye that you should be afraid. You're afraid, and then you explain it this way. You don't like fear doesn't, like, you don't, like, build up fear and be like, oh wait, look at that. This is, like, you could, but usually this is not normally how it goes. So this seems like this is actually has a little bit of a backwards phenomenology. The phenomenology here is backwards. We don't, like, sort of, like, it's also from Shakespeare. Oh, how do I love you? Let me count the ways. You don't know that you love them by counting the ways. The ways are in some sense reductive, and it's a confused thing to think that you're gonna get the love out of the parts. You love the whole thing. So, okay. Anyway, hey, maybe Maguire is on top of it here. Maguire claims that by contrast you have lots of distinct reasons for and against some specific action, say running away from the dragon. But what matters here isn't whether you could have many reasons for running away from the dragon, is whether the dragon's sharp claws and murderous look constitute distinct reasons for running away from the dragon. I submit that this is neither more nor less plausible than the claim that they are both reasons for fearing the dragon. Yeah, see, I'm going to have to go ahead and disagree with the whole sort of concept here of, I think they've got the phenomenology wrong of this sort of emotion. Like, fear does not, you don't add your fears up and be like, oh wait, it got over my fear limit, I'm now afraid. Yeah, maybe I should write something like that. Be like, Yeah, I've got like X fears. I'm over the Y limit, therefore I am now afraid. I should run away. And it's just a reductio out of nonsense. McGuire may be right that it can seem strange to claim that two considerations are distinct reasons when they are representative of the same value. Here, whatever value makes the dragon to be feared and to be run from. This helps explain the appeal of his argument. Perhaps for each attitude, all FMCs stem from a single source of value, and this masks relevant interactions between them. However, if FMCs stem from a single value per one attitude, there may still be clear cases of combination and competition. To see this, consider a variant on the dragon case. You happen upon a dragon with sharp claws and a murderous look. We may eliminate the prejudicial claim that the dragon is terrible. Yes, I mean, go watch The Witcher. The dragon says, I just want to be friends. Are these reasons for and against running away? Or go watch Shrek for that matter. This is debatable. One might claim that these are merely reasons for and against believing that the dragon is dangerous, and that is her being dangerous that would be a reason for you to run. And also, Aesop, well, this is the Aesop's Just So story. What was it? The lion pulls like some animal. So why did you attack me? And like some small animal helps some dangerous animal because the dangerous animal had like a thorn in their foot and they couldn't get out. Small animal helps it and says, "Well, you're gonna eat me as soon as I do." And lion says, "No, I'm cool." And then the small animal pulls it out and the lion attacks them and says, "Why did you do that? You said you wouldn't." He said, "Well, I'm a lion." So I'm a little. Yeah, I'm sorry about the aside, but like this discussion seems to be wrong-headed. This may be right in terms of what McGuire says, but I'm a little bit worried about the underlying thought here. Anyway, let's get through this. Settling this is beyond the scope of this paper. Here I simply note that many would take these to be reasons for and against running away. Yeah, see, do you really? It's fight or flight, or fright, yeah, something like that. This is weird concepts here. If they are, it is clear that they can compete to determine whether you ought to run away. And it seems perfectly plausible that while neither the sharp claws nor the murderous look alone is sufficient to outweigh the dragon's claim, only to be interested in friendship, in combination they are, you ought to run. And then we had another paper that said people always defer to what a person says as opposed to their the way they act. So in some sense, this also does not comport with the recent experimental data in philosophy that says people actually will take someone's word over how they're acting. Okay. More importantly, this is no less plausible if we take these to be reasons for and against fearing her. Yeah. Gradability. McGuire argues that reasons for actions are gradable, that is, they have weights, while FMCs are not. True, McGuire notes we often say things like, you have more reasons for fearing wolves than dogs, but he maintains that these are not really gradable reasons for an attitude. They are FMCs for a gradable attitude. That is, the above claim really means that it is fitting to feel more fear regarding wolves, less fear regarding dogs. The explanation he offers is that fittingness is binary. Attitudes are either fitting or unfitting. Certainly, fittingness is binary, but it doesn't follow that FMCs lack weight. The analogy with action is again instructive. Permissibility is binary, and action is either permissible or impermissible. Clearly, it doesn't follow that reasons for action lack weight. This doesn't mean McGuire is wrong that FMCs lack weight, only that the binary nature of fittingness doesn't settle the matter. However, the variation on the dragon case at the end of section 2 does suggest that McGuire is wrong insofar as it is plausible that the combined weight of the dragon's sharp claws and murderous look make it fitting to feel fear despite her talk of friendship. Yeah. Okay. Even if one denies that those are distinct reasons, as in the case of competition, the difference McGuire cites here is due to common differences between reason and affective attitudes, not between kinds of normative support. Most actions are not gradable. I can't push an A a little bit, I push it or I don't. By contrast, affective attitudes are arguably always gradable. We always feel things to some degree. Notice, however, that in cases where an action is gradable, for example, giving to charity, we often do talk about reasons as determining how much to give rather than whether to. There can be reasons to give or not to give to charity, but there can also be reasons to give $10, $100, or $1,000. Yeah, this is I mentioned this sometime last time, I think, or when I was talking recently about abductive inferences, inference to the best explanation. Like, you have a reason to say there is a best an explanation, but then calling it best is gradable. And I think this is a good point. The gradability of things gets conflated with the just the fact that you have the binary the fact that things can be graded is separate from whether they are of a type or not, like to be permissible or not. Okay. We tend to talk about the former when there is intra-option competition between reasons for and against giving to charity, and intra-option competition between reasons for and against giving to charity, and inter-option competition with reasons for giving to charity versus doing something else that is in tension with giving to charity. Yeah, so you can figure out how much money to give, but if you're that already assumes you're going to do it. We tend to talk about the latter when it is settled that we ought to give to charity, but aren't sure how much the reasons support giving. The parallel with affective attitudes should be clear. Either FMCs compete or they do not. If they do, then as in the variation on the dragon case, they will have weight. If they do not, because of the nature of affective attitudes, it is utterly unsurprising and untroubling that FMCs always support some degree of sadness rather than supporting sadness to some degree. They would do the latter in the context where their weight mattered, where they needed to be weighted against considerations. Without competition, this need would never arise. Implications for buck passers, which seems to be the state of the world at the moment. It's not our fault, it's someone else's fault. Buck never stops anywhere. I mean, I don't know how much what you feel about Harry S. Truman, the president who dropped the nuclear bombs on Japan, but he had the origin of the buck passing statement, I believe, was with him, or the famousness of it, because he had a sign on his desk that said, "The buck stops here." And if you're gonna drop bombs on people like that, you better take some responsibility. At least he had a sign that said he did. One of McGuire's central targets is buck passing, views on which various normative phenomena are analyzed in terms of others. For example, value is analyzed in terms of reasons, or both value and reasons are analyzed in terms of fittingness. In closing, I argue that even if McGuire were right that there are no reasons for affective attitudes, it is unclear how troubling this would be for buck passers. Begin with the following passages. Sometimes we need to make an all or nothing judgment about some relatively coarse-grained question, such as whether a particular judge is admirable. Perhaps you are chair of the town admiration committee and the judge is one of the favorites for the annual prize. Then you do the best you can. But this is a question about reasons for action. The question is not whether it is fitting to admire the judge. The question is whether you ought to give her the prize. Lots of reasons will bear on this question: how people would react either way, whatever precedents there might be, what the town administration committee rulebook says, and so on. Let's assume this is roughly correct. One point of clarification. McGuire is right that the question is not merely whether it is fitting to admire the judge, but many of the reasons for and against giving her the prize will be the same considerations that make it fitting or unfitting to admire her. What's more, since the prize is, in part, an expression of admiration, these considerations are reasons for and against giving her the prize because they make it fitting or unfitting to admire her. In this context, these considerations compete, combine, and have weight. I mean, to make this more realistic, let's just go with the lesser of two evils, and then you still have the same problem, because it seems like that's the way things are going now too. Say the fact that the judge carefully maintains consistency, well, not the judge, his or her, this specific person in mind, but sorry, still thinking about the current government administrations. Say the fact that the judge carefully maintains consistency in her sentencing makes it fitting to admire her. This is surely a reason for giving her the prize. Again, this is no coincidence. It is a reason for giving her the prize because it makes it fitting to admire her. As a reason for action, it will compete with other considerations, such as the admirable things her competitors have done, and it will combine with other considerations, such as the other admirable things she has done. In all of this, it will have weight. Now consider one of McGuire's targets. a buck passing view on which it is understood in terms of reasons for desiring. Obviously, there are no reasons for desiring. This is a false view. Well, obviously, if there are no reasons for desiring, this view is false. But for all Maguire has said, a simple amendment might be all that's needed. Perhaps we can analyze value in terms of FMCs for desiring, and these same considerations become reasons in context where we face questions of what we do. Following this thought, let us close with the toy view. First, for something to be intrinsically valuable is for it to be desirable for its own sake. Second, we have reason to take action that promote value. Now suppose safety and beauty are both desirable for their own sakes. I buy an old house. The house is beautiful, but many of its beautiful features make it unsafe. How should I feel? Perhaps these FMCs don't compete, combine, or weigh against each other. I should simply desire both to maintain the house's beauty and to make it safer to whatever degree each desire is fitting. But now I have to decide what to do, at which point these very same considerations do compete, combine, and weigh against each other. Perhaps, for instance, a greater degree of desire is fitting for safety than for maintaining the house's beauty, and therefore I should renovate. This all seems perfectly sensible, well in keeping with Maguire's thesis, and in no way challenges the spirit of the toy view in question. Okay, this is nice. Granted, it seems to just be the sole reference is this Barry Maguire in paper, just talking about that. So we didn't get a whole lot of other stuff going on here. I have serious doubts that the understanding of emotion going on here are particularly phenomenologically supported. Like, you don't add up your fears any more than you add up reasons to love someone, and then find out, you can find out later that you didn't realize you were in love, or that you didn't realize that you were afraid, and maybe the reasons can play into that, but that's not what made the fear or the love to begin with. So I have this sort of reflective understanding. It's not reflective. You can reflect and realize you are in love or afraid after the fact, but it's this reductive view that the reasons add up and somehow get over a threshold, and then like, oh yes, of course, I'm in love now because this one little thing happened, and that added up to get just a little bit over the now I love them limit. That doesn't make any sense. So I don't know what the background is for the how that plays with this, but it makes some of the examples here a little weird to my ear. But other than that, nice paper, and I will see you guys later. Have a safe day, and if you want to give me a suggestion on what to read next. Thanks. Bye.